Welcome into the Steelers Talk live show. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. I missed you guys. It's been almost a week here, Ponzi, since we've been live. NFL free agency is quickly approaching. And today on the show, we've got a bunch of great free agency, or I should say pre-free agency coverage for you guys here on Steelers Talk. First up, as usual, the latest Steelers news and rumors of the day. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in our news and rumors segment today. Then we'll get into two separate segments, all right? Wide receiver, obviously a big priority for the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into free agency this year. I have my own separate segment for wide receiver free agency targets. Then we'll get into all the other positions that the Pittsburgh Steelers could be looking at outside of quarterback, because we've talked a lot of quarterback stuff here on the show, but safety, left guard, running back, cornerback. We're going to be talking about all the other positions that the Steelers could be looking to add in free agency this year in our final segment today. So it's going to be a fun one here on the show. But before we get into all the great content today, I want to see who the real ones are down there in the chat that are here at the beginning of today's show. Spam those me's in the chat if you're here at the beginning of the show and you've clicked that thumbs up icon. Guys, clicking that thumbs up icon is the fastest and easiest way to help support our live stream. It boosts the YouTube algorithm to put this in front of more Steelers fans across the globe. So if you guys want to help us out today, spam those me's in the chat. We got Czar Craig in the chat. What's up, my man, Craig? We've got Seawolf. We've got Robbie. We got Kennedy. We've got Trumper, Voxy, my lovely fiance Cassie Voth is here as always. We've got Preston. We've got Tegan. Got Kevin, Mike. We've got Chuck Dugan. We've got the Thumper. We've got David. We've got Yankuski in the chat. What's up, my man? We've got Kevin Reed, Donalds, Robert Derringer, Tristan White, Calvin. We've got Noah. We've got Calvin, Mr. Deadhead, Otis Crandall's here. Tristan White, Mike KD. We got a great crew of Yinzers ready to talk some ball today. And with that, let's bring in our producer here. Mr. Ponzi is joining us here on a Thursday. And Ponzi, I definitely think it's going to be an interesting free agency for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We are going to certainly be looking at maybe adding a receiver of some kind, whether that be via trade or free agency here within the next week. I'm pretty sure we're going to know who our quarterback is going to be within the next week. So who are you hoping that the Pittsburgh Steelers land in free agency or in a trade over the next week?
Now, if we're being unrealistic here, I mean, I would love to see A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf pair up once again. I feel like, that would be, it's huge for this roster. I feel like, getting that wide receiver duo would be amazing. However, if we're thinking about more a little bit realism, I think Romeo Doubs is a great fit for what the Steelers want to do. I think definitely wide receivers should be the focus, especially in this free agency class. I think, there's a good amount of wide receiver 2, 3s in the free agency class this year, so I think you can't really go wrong, except maybe Brandon Ayuk, who I don't want them to sign at all. But, wide receiver especially, if they make a trade, hopefully wide receiver. If they make a free agency signing, wide receiver.
Yeah, man. Is A.J. Brown really that unrealistic? I mean, man. It sounds like the Eagles are willing to listen, and I think the Steelers, A.J. Brown would be their type. He can get open to all three levels of the field. He's one of the premier deep threats in the league, one of the premier yak threats in the league. He's one of the most complete wide receivers in football. And, if you're trying to lure Aaron Rodgers back, and maybe part of the reason why Rodgers hasn't fully committed to the Steelers at this point is because he wants to see what the Steelers do at the wide receiver position. He doesn't want to get stuck in a position like last year where, the wide receiver position sucks and it limits what he's able to do as a quarterback. I think that maybe if he wants to, he might want to take his time a little bit here to eventually hitch his wagon to the Steelers because he wants to see which veteran wide receiver he brings in here. And, if it's not to his liking, who knows? Maybe he goes to Minnesota. Maybe he decides to retire. I still think by far the most likely scenario for Rodgers is that he is our starting quarterback next year. And, by this time next week, we will know that for sure. But, if you were willing to trade, a pretty decent price tag for A.J. Brown, they traded a second-round pick last year for DK, so we kind of feel like to get the right receiver, they would be willing to send the second-round pick for him. But it's going to be more than that to get A.J. Brown. According to reports, the Eagles are looking for a quote-unquote Quinnen Williams-type deal for A.J., and that included a first, a second, and a player. And I don't think that that's something that the Steelers want to do. I don't think they want to give up a first and a second and a player. I think that, if they were to offer something to the Eagles, it could be something similar to this, where it's the second round pick. So, very similar, situation to DK, where you're sending your second round pick to get a veteran receiver, but then you also add Alex Highsmith to the deal. And listen, man, I don't want to give up Highsmith. I think he's an awesome football player. He's on a value contract, but he's 28. And he's still a very valuable trade asset. The Eagles have like 2 edge rushers on their entire roster right now. They need to add an edge rusher. Highsmith would be, their number 1 right now, in my opinion. And I think that, if Highsmith were involved in the deal, they would certainly consider it. And then another thing about A.J. Brown, Ponzi, is that he would be under contract for 4 seasons here in Pittsburgh, the same amount of time that DK Metcalf is still under contract here with the Steelers. So you get A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf locked up for almost the next half decade here in Pittsburgh. And that's one of, if not the best wide receiver duos in football. Not to mention, before you say something here, Ponzi, if you let go of Alex Highsmith, who you're probably going to trade next offseason anyways, that means you can keep and extend Nick Herbig, and you can give him the full-time starting role that he's looking for.
And, I really think, a good point about this, of including Alex Highsmith rather than Nick Herbig, is that, the Eagles would have their edge rusher on a contract, a team-friendly contract, for a good bit. What is it, 3 years?
For what? For
Highsmith.
Highsmith's under contract for 2 more years.
2 more years. So, you look at that, and you look at the fact that, Nick Herbig would need an extension if he was traded to the Eagles. I think, Highsmith provides a little bit more value, and I think, maybe getting a second, maybe they would ask for something else. Maybe like a second, maybe third.
Maybe throw in Roman Wilson.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Maybe something like that.
I think, this would be a good foundation to get a trade started. I don't know if the Eagles would trade up accept this, but I think,
I think they might, man. Like, who is trading a first and a second for A.J. Brown?
I just don't know.
Maybe the Patriots, but, I for a 20...
I would really think the Eagles want a player back.
But you're getting Highsmith.
That's what I'm saying. I really think the Eagles would want a player back.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Pats are going to be willing to do that.
Listen, if the Eagles want Roman Wilson in this deal, I'll throw Roman Wilson in. But, this is something that I would do, man, because, you might be saying, but, Jack, we can't afford to have A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf on the same team. Yes, we can, man. I think we have this graphic here, Ponzi, if we want to show.
Yeah, I'll try to get it.
If you can try to get it. We have A.J. Brown's cap hits if he's traded. Next year, it's not very high, guys. It's for sure less than $20 million. I think it's $19 million for somebody that I would consider a top 5 receiver in football right now. A.J. Brown, in terms of what he brings to the table, the route running, the yard after stuff. Oh, it's even lower. It's less than $15 million against the cap next year if you acquire A.J. Brown. And then the following year, it's still less than 20. You're paying DK a lot of money, sure, but if you're only going 15 and then $19 million against the cap with A.J. Brown, that is more than doable for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then once we get into the 2028, 2029 conversation, DK, there might be a conversation about trading him elsewhere, about letting him walk, maybe cutting him, depending on how he does over these next couple seasons. And, certainly, the cap hits here for somebody that I would consider one of the top receivers in football, it's very, very manageable. Now, the downside to getting an A.J. Brown is that you have all that dead money, all that void money that expires in 2030, and that comes crashing to a halt in that 2030 season. But the Steelers could restructure if they want to.
And the cap's going up.
And the cap's going up. So, by the time we get to 2030 with the cap going up 20 mil every single year, that might not be that bad at that point. And then, they could structure the contract where maybe they add a couple void years to kind of distribute that $53.5 million over the course of a couple seasons. And who knows, maybe he plays so well he gets another contract here in Pittsburgh, right? We just don't know. But if the Steelers are trying to go all in, Ponzi, if they are for sure trying to go for it and trying to, take that next step and become a team that's capable of winning playoff games this year instead of just a team capable of getting to the playoffs, A.J. Brown's the type of needle-moving type of move that could catapult the Pittsburgh Steelers from, middle of the pack offensively last year, slightly below average, to a legitimate top 10 offense in football. And I believe Aaron Rodgers would be the right quarterback to kind of orchestrate that offense this year.
One point a lot of people will say, against him, A.J. Brown has an attitude problem. He has an attitude problem. But like, I think, getting back with DK Metcalf would actually, kind of quell that. They're really good friends, so, when they work out together in the offseason. I think, this
college
would be,
teammates.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know if A.J. Brown, if there's a team he would go to where he would crash out the least, I think it would be the Steelers.
And listen, man, I'll just say this. Like, if he gets fed the football, he's not going to have an issue. You know what I mean? And, like, if the Steelers trade a second and Alex Highsmith for this cat, like, they're going to feed him. Like, he's going to be the number one receiver in this offense. And especially if you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers who knows how to feed a number one receiver, just ask Devontae Adams. I mean, like, that is, in my opinion, one of the best wide receiver duos in football. And if the price tag is a second and Alex Highsmith, I would consider it if I am the Pittsburgh Steelers. But let us know down there in the comments who's a free agent that you're hoping that the Pittsburgh Steelers land this offseason, and maybe they'll be on my free agency targets list that we'll be doing later in the show. But if you guys want to get in, you guys can super chat today if you guys want to get a question on the show today. Really do appreciate all of your guys' support. Got some here from our guy, Bernard Nixon, who's already got a flurry of super chats. He says, Chris Sims says that he would take Kirk Cousins over Aaron Rodgers, which is weird because Chris Sims is like the biggest Rodgers like slurper of all time. He says he's the greatest quarterback to ever live. I don't know what you watched last year if you think Kirk Cousins is more capable of leading a team, specifically playing in the AFC North. I mean, Kirk Cousins can barely throw at 30 yards down the field with a giant heave. I mean, we saw Aaron Rodgers throw it 70 yards in the air on a Hail Mary last year, still has the zip on the football, still has that lightning quick release. This is ridiculous to me. If he actually did say that, I mean, he's right up there with Mike Tannenbaum for, clown row on, the general media here in the National Football League. $5 again from Bernard says, I'm confused with this Rodgers and Steelers thing. I mean, there's a reason why Aaron Rodgers' documentary is titled Enigmas, because he is confusing and he is vague at times. And, the stuff that he said yesterday, not confirming that he's coming back or that he wants to come back to the Steelers, all that different stuff. Like, it's like there's a lot of the things that he was saying that indicate that he wants to come back. His love for Mike McCarthy, his love for a lot of the people on the Steelers coaching staff that were working in Green Bay when Rodgers was there under the McCarthy era. Talking about Ben Skoranek multiple times, talking about how much he loved his teammates and his experience in 2025. Like, it seems like he really loved his time here in Pittsburgh, but, the fact that he's non-committal here, is a little bit, interesting here. Now, it's possible that he has an agreement with the Steelers where it's like, we're not even going to have, discussions on contracts or anything like that until we get to the weekend before free agency. And it really wouldn't surprise me here if we have a deal of some kind this weekend. So make sure you guys are subscribed and have those notifications turned on, because if we have a breaking news live show this weekend with Rodgers making his decision, I don't want you guys to miss that show. $2 from Bernard says, do you think A-Rod is scared to take a hit? I don't, man. Like, this is such a bullshit narrative to me. Like, did you see some of the hits Rodgers took last year, man? Like, he almost never really left the pocket. He took a lot of really hard hits last year, man. Like, I think this is just a bullshit narrative that people say when somebody gets older, is that they don't want to get hit anymore and they won't stand in the pocket. But, like, just go look up Aaron Rodgers' highlights from last year, guys, and you'll be surprised by how many times you see him standing and delivering in a tight pocket or, with pressure on him and, doing all those things. So I think that that's a BS narrative, at least in my opinion, and I actually think pocket presence at this stage in his career is one of the most underrated aspects of his game. He's always had elite-level pocket presence throughout his career. Now, he doesn't have the escapability or the mobility to kind of scramble the way way that he used to, but his feel for rush and that ability to find that little hole in that pocket inside the pocket there, to step up into and to do these little side steps and all this different kind of subtle pocket movements. Like, he's still really, really good at that stuff. He's got really quick feet at his age, especially. And no, he's not afraid to take a hit. I think he showed that time and time again last year. More super chats coming in here. Bernard says, "Who do you want, Murray or Aaron Rodgers?" Listen, man, I get the Murray, appeal because he's very talented, former number 1 overall pick. And, he's going at the vet minimum. It's going to be $1.3 million. I mean, it's the Russell Wilson situation all over again. But here's the thing, man. Like, I don't know if he's an AFC North quarterback. He's only played in 1 game in his entire NFL career where the weather was under 45 degrees. He's only played outside in less than 30% of his NFL games. He's only played in 1 game where it's been raining outside, and that was one of the worst games of his career. It was 2 years ago in Green Bay. I don't know, man. He's had multiple lower body injuries. He's very dependent on out-of-structure playmaking, and I think that McCarthy really likes his quarterbacks to be great in-structure playmakers. That doesn't describe Kyler Murray to me. For me, I'm personally not the biggest Murray guy. Now, I don't think Murray's the worst option. Like, if Rodgers retires and they bring in Murray on the minimum, it's like, why not? It's a 1-year thing. I mean, at this point, the name of the game is get us to 2027 where we can draft our franchise quarterback of the future. That's, to me, the name of the game, because the 2027 NFL draft class should be much better than this year's quarterback class. And, even if the Steelers, are drafting in the 20s again and they make the playoffs again this year, like, the chances of them being able to at least trade up for a good quarterback prospect in 2027 is pretty darn high, all right? They might have to give up their first-round pick in 2028 to make it happen, but, like, I'm pretty darn certain that the Steelers are going to have the opportunity to draft a legitimate franchise option in 2027. So, Murray is a decent stopgap option to see if he could be, maybe a long-term answer or even just a good short-term kind of stopgap option as well. $2 from Bernard says, "Do you think A-Rod is Steelers plan B instead?" I don't think so. I think he's plan A. I think he's pretty clearly plan A based on what Omar has said and what Mike McCarthy has said and what everybody in the media has said. Now, maybe it's possible Omar Khan is doing a fantastic smokescreen here. They've certainly pulled off their fair share of smokescreens throughout the years. Maybe they do really want Malik Willis or Kyler Murray, and they're kind of putting it out there that they want Rodgers to kind of get people off their scent. That is a possibility. But I think that Aaron Rodgers is probably still the priority for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think that they're waiting for him to fully commit to the team before offering him a contract. And we'll see if that happens before the start of NFL free agency. Again, another 5 here from Bernard. Says, Chris Sims said Rodgers doesn't want to stand in the pocket and throw the ball down the field. He's just wrong. He didn't want to throw the ball downfield last year because no one was open down the field, and people would always double team DK Metcalf. It's like, get him. What have I been saying all offseason, guys? Get Aaron Rodgers a legitimate wide receiver trio and watch the ball go downfield more often. Mike McCarthy loves to throw the ball down the field, guys. All right, so if we can get Rodgers a couple more legitimate downfield threats, you're going to see him throw the ball down the field more often and more efficiently. $2 from Bernard says, I think people are sick of A-Rod. I just think people are sick of his antics. That's certainly more than fair. I mean, it is frustrating. I mean, when he goes on Pat McAfee's show less than a week before the start of free agency, and then he's like, oh, I'm not making a decision today. It's like he knows that every Steelers fan on the planet is waiting to see what his decision is going to be. And, it's almost like a joke to him that he goes on McAfee and doesn't provide any updates. It's like, it's a little bit frustrating. I completely understand that. But, I do think that he probably gives this team its best chance to have success and win next season with Mike McCarthy coming in. So, and the players love him. The players absolutely want him back. So if they want him back, I want him back. Justin Yankuski with a 5 says, do you think Rodgers and the Steelers miscommunication is a fake for press and they both know? listen, man, like, obviously I don't know for sure. Now, in terms of what I think is going on, I don't think that Rodgers has. I think almost Rodgers is using the lack of a contract offer as almost like an excuse for him not making a decision, right? Because Rappaport said last night the Steelers aren't going to offer Rodgers a contract until they know he would accept one. And Rodgers was like, well, I haven't gotten a contract yet, so I don't have anything to debate over. But it's like, I think that the onus is more on Aaron letting the Steelers know what he wants to do more than the Steelers offering Rodgers a contract, right? I think that, the second Aaron Rodgers picks up that phone and calls Omar Khan and Mike McCarthy, like the contract's not going to be the issue. It's going to be a one-year deal somewhere between $10 and $15 million. So I think that was almost a little bit of a cop-out on Aaron's part to try and not answer the question where it's like, hey, I don't have a contract offer. I don't have to answer this question. But it's like, you kind of do. like everyone knows that the Steelers want you back. Everyone knows that you've been having multiple conversations with Mike McCarthy and people want answers. And maybe he's not ready to give an answer yet, but the clock's ticking because free agency starts next week, and it's a game of musical chairs. And last year, the Steelers kept a chair open for him. I'm not sure if they will do the same thing this year. So if he wants to wait a couple more weeks, and if he wants to wait another month or two to decide if he wants to play, I don't think the Steelers are going to wait around for him. I really don't. I think that, maybe they wait a week or two, but eventually, there's going to be a tipping point where Omar Khan and Mike McCarthy move on. But we'll see if Aaron Rodgers does make his decision before then. All right, guys. Now, before we get into our first segment of the day, you guys can check out our Steel City Drinking Team t-shirts. You guys can get express shipping on these t-shirts to get them just before St. Patrick's Day for $5 off when you use express shipping today. That's chatsports.com/pitgreen. Like I said, guys, you can use you can get $5 off express shipping when you go chatsports.com/pitgreen. So I really do appreciate your guys' support. And we help design these t-shirts ourselves here at Chat Sports, man. Like we put a lot of work into this stuff, and you guys have been asking for merch opportunities for a very long time. So if you guys want to get your Steel City Drinking Team t-shirt in that beautiful St. Patrick's Day green, you can go chatsports.com /pitgreen. That link is down there in the comments and description of today's show. This is what it's going to look like, guys, where you have to click that express option, and it's going to take off $5 for your express shipping there. So get $5 off express shipping, chatsports.com/pitgreen if you want your t-shirt to get to you here before St. Patrick's Day. Greatly appreciate your guys' support. And, of course, we've got Steelers Talk t-shirts available as well. So if you're not a big fan of green and you want something that you can maybe wear more year-round, you can go chatsports.com/Steelers Talk. This t-shirt is $24.99 on our website right now. And I know you guys have been asking for a long time for Steelers Talk t-shirts and stuff like that. Well, we finally have it up on our website. And then if you want to pair your St. Patrick's Day t-shirt with a Beers hat, we have one up on our channel right now, chatsports.com/beers if you want to get that hat. Really do appreciate your guys' support on the merch game. All right, so let's get into some final super chats here, and then we'll get into our first segment of the day. This one coming in from Meximander says, how about trading some draft picks for Stephon Diggs? Well, here's the thing, Meximander. You don't have to trade anything for Stephon Diggs because he's a free agent. The New England Patriots are releasing him. Now, the thing that's tricky about Diggs is that he's going through some legal troubles right now and for some pretty serious allegations, and I don't know if any team is going to touch him until those things get resolved. This honestly might be like after the draft, somebody doesn't get the wide receiver of their choosing, but they need another starting receiver. Maybe after the draft he signs somewhere after this legal situation gets ironed out. But he's a good receiver. When he's healthy, he's a 1,000-plus receiver, pretty much guaranteed. He's got great hands. He's an awesome route runner, good football player. But obviously with the legal stuff, I don't know if the Steelers want to mess around with that right now. $2 from Trumper says, different topic, but do you think the Penguins have a good shot at the Stanley Cup? Also, the answer at wide receiver is either A.J. Brown or Jordan Addison. Listen, man, the Pens are playing really well, man. They're playing really well. And I know Sid's out for the time being, but they're still winning, and they're playing the best teams in hockey, and they're still beating them. So, I think that it's a really well-rounded group. The Penguins have been the best that they've been in years, in my opinion. And hopefully the Steelers can follow suit here in 2026 and finally get us a playoff win. But I would love A.J. Brown or Jordan Addison. We'll see if the Vikings think about Addison. I'm not too sure that they will. I honestly think A.J. Brown might be more realistic than Jordan Addison between those two options there, Ponzi. $5 from Mexamander says, how about trading some draft picks? He sent the same question in again, but I appreciate the extra $5 there, Mexamander. All right, man. Well, let's get into our first segment of the day, the latest Steelers news and rumors. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today, and then we'll get into our free agency targets videos later in the show. So make sure you guys stick around for those. But in the meantime, let's get into our first segment of the day. The Steelers news and rumors is coming at you guys right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers just got some bad news in their pursuit of a wide receiver 2 this offseason. I'll let you guys know what that is at the top of today's program. Also, there's another quarterback option that has emerged for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially if Aaron Rodgers decides to call it quits this offseason. There's a surprise team need that has been revealed for the Pittsburgh Steelers that they might address in free agency this year. And then at the end of today's show, I'm going to be breaking down the 4 players that I could see the Steelers restructure at some point this offseason to create more cap space. Make sure you guys stick around to see who those restructure candidates are. But before we get into the content today, guys, make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're just getting started with our coverage here during this offseason. And of course, over the next 2 weeks or so, there's going to be about as much news and as much breaking news as there is the entire football schedule because of NFL free agency and trades and all this different stuff that's coming up. If you guys want all of our breaking news coverage here on Steelers Talk for free, make sure you guys click that subscribe button. We're also going to be live for most of the first week of NFL free agency right here on Steelers Talk. So join the over 115,000 Steelers fans already subscribed to Steelers Talk and join the largest individually run Steelers news program anywhere here on YouTube. All right, so the Steelers got some bad news today, folks, as the Chicago Bears have officially traded wide receiver DJ Moore and a 5th-round pick to the Buffalo Bills in exchange for a 2nd-round pick. Now, you might be saying at home, but Jack, I didn't want DJ Moore as our wide receiver too. Well, the bad news doesn't have anything to do with DJ Moore. It involves his trade, but the bad news in particular for the Pittsburgh Steelers is that this trade is probably going to screw up the wide receiver trade market for the Steelers right before the start of free agency. It's been well known that the Steelers have been poking around the trade market here at the wide receiver position to see if they can land a legitimate veteran wide receiver to pair with DK Metcalf. Of course, they traded for Metcalf the day before free agency last year. But this trade that Chicago did with Buffalo to send Moore to the Bills values DJ Moore, somebody who was like the 4th best receiver on the Bears, a late 2nd-round pick. So, like, these teams, like the Dolphins and Jalen Waddle and A.J. Brown, I mean, the Eagles are asking an astronomical amount for A.J. Brown regardless, but this certainly, sets A.J. Brown's market at a certain point. But also, like, you think this team is going to be able to trade for Brian Thomas Jr. for just a 2nd-round pick now? Like, if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm like, Brian Thomas Jr. is way more valuable of a trade asset than DJ Moore. I'm not taking just a 2nd for him. Like, you're going to have to up the ante to get Brian Thomas Jr. at this point. And listen, man, like, I think they're probably going to ask for a 1st-round pick if the Steelers want to trade for Brian Thomas Jr. this year, and I just don't know if I feel comfortable doing that. Like, he had a big drop issue last year. There's only one receiver in football or in NFL football that had more drops than BTJ had last year, and it was Jerry Jeudy. All right, and we know Jerry Jeudy very notoriously has a big drop issue. And if you're trading your 1st-round pick for this guy, you run the risk of having that big drop issue here in Pittsburgh. But what do you guys think of this trade idea, where you do a little bit of a pick swap, where this trade, by the way, still values Brian Thomas Jr. as a 2nd-round value, but you're going to have to give up your 1st-round pick to Jacksonville. You do get Jacksonville's 2nd-round pick this year at number 56. So instead of a 1st-round pick, you'd have 2 seconds and Brian Thomas Jr. You also have to send a 6th in this potential deal. But let me know what you guys think about this potential trade idea down there in the comments section. Type A if you would accept it, or D if you would decline it. It's definitely an interesting thought, bringing in Brian Thomas Jr., but you're not going to have a 1st-round pick in the draft that you are hosting in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh. It's probably not the most ideal situation for the black and gold, but this will be the pinned comment on today's show. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today. While I tell you about our sponsor here on Steelers Talk for today's video, give me an A for accept or D for decline. And today or this week is really the last chance that you guys have to get your Steel City Drinking Team t-shirts before St. Patrick's Day. And at this point, you're going to have to get express shipping to guarantee delivery of your t-shirt before the holiday. You guys can go chatsports.com/pitgreen down there in the comments and description of today's show. That link is there. And this is a limited edition t-shirt, guys. It's only going to be around until St. Patrick's Day, and it's only $29.99 on our website right now. So if you guys love St. Patrick's Day, as I know a lot of Pittsburghers do, we got this awesome design for you guys that I helped design here at Chat Sports. And my bosses tell me, guys, the more of these babies that we sell, the more merch opportunities we are going to get here on Steelers Talk. So whenever we sign players in free agency, whether we trade for a receiver, whether we draft somebody early in the first round of the NFL draft, right, we're going to have these merch opportunities for you guys. So if you want to get yours today, it's chatsports.com/pitgreen. I really do appreciate all of your guys' support, and you guys can get express shipping on this t-shirt for $5 off right now. So you guys can go chatsports.com/pitgreen, select the express shipping option there, and you'll get $5 off express shipping when you make this order today. And you can also pair that t-shirt with a Beers hat. Go to chatsports.com/beers to pick up one of our Chat Sports Beers hats on our website right now. Greatly appreciate all of your guys' support with all the merch that we've been pushing on the show. All right, man, so let's get into the quarterback situation here now, where the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Ray Filipaldo says that Jacoby Brissett could be a quarterback option for the Pittsburgh Steelers here in 2026 if Aaron Rodgers decides to retire or leave the Steelers this offseason. Essentially what Ray said was they could bring in Brissett, and then they would have him as the bridge quarterback option, and then eventually Will Howard takes over the starting job here in Pittsburgh. Well, to share my thoughts on this, guys, first of all, Jacoby Brissett's under contract with the Arizona Cardinals next season. Now, it's possible that a trade or a cut could happen. It's a new regime going into Arizona with Mike LaFleur and Nathaniel Hackett and company. Brissett was there during the Jonathan Gannon era, so it's possible that they would be very open to a trade or a cut scenario here, especially for a decent draft pick in a trade. But, it's definitely possible that he gets cut as well, because last year, I thought that he played pretty well. Like, he wasn't, stellar or anything like that. He showed himself to be what he is. And what is Jacoby Brissett, guys? He's a very low-end, replaceable starter type of guy, spot starter, high-end backup. That's what Jacoby Brissett has been for years, and that is what he still is. 23 touchdowns, 8 interceptions is not shabby there, but obviously the Cardinals didn't do a lot of winning with him as the starting quarterback there in the desert. But listen, man, as bridge quarterback options go, Pittsburgh could do a lot worse than Jacoby Brissett if they want to bring in a bridge veteran and have him compete with Will Howard in camp next year. Brissett is big. He's got a strong arm. He processes defenses very, very well. I'm sure he'd be a great mentor to Will Howard, just like Aaron Rodgers was last year, and he would be cheap against the cap. So I would be fine with the Jacoby Brissett and Will Howard quarterback competition for a year. I mean, especially if the Steelers load up on talent at the receiver position. We've seen Jacoby Brissett play pretty well and play well inside the AFC North. He certainly has the size and the arm strength to raise the floor of this football team for a season while we wait and see if Will Howard can maybe raise the ceiling of it. And then if that's the scenario, I would get rid of Mason Rudolph and maybe bring in another younger quarterback option to, put into the mix, like a Will Levis or a Trey Lance or an Anthony Richardson, and really make things interesting and have multiple potential long-term options for the Steelers at quarterback in this room heading into camp next year. But now we can shift our focus here to offensive tackle, where I'm going to pose the question here. Because I've seen some mock drafts, have offensive tackle for the Steelers in round 1. I've seen some people project some of the top offensive tackles in free agency to the Steelers. Is this actually something that the Steelers could consider, bringing in an offensive tackle to start for this offense in 2026? Well, our current options are Dylan Cook and, of course, Broderick Jones. Now, I really doubt the Steelers will pick up Broderick Jones' fifth-year option. He just hasn't played at a super high level in his career, and now he's going to be coming coming off a very major neck injury where he just had fusion surgery on his neck, and it's not even confirmed that he's going to be ready to go by camp. And even if he is, he's probably going to have to compete with Dylan Cook, who played really well last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, he got his ass handed to him by Danielle Hunter in the playoff game, but it's Danielle Hunter. I mean, he does that against some of the best offensive tackles in football. So, I think Dylan Cook, the question with him is that success that we saw in a relatively small sample size last year sustainable? After Broderick Jones went down, is what we saw from Dylan Cook something that we can expect from him moving forward? And personally, I'm good riding with Cook at left tackle for a season, and especially with Broderick Jones still on the roster. You can have those two kind of battle it out in camp next year. I think Cook is probably going to win that battle for what it's worth. I think that he's just a better, more polished player than Broderick is. And, who knows, maybe Broderick, after this surgery, comes back a new man and he's absolutely amazing and he wins the job. But if that happens, that's good news, right? You didn't waste your first round pick in Broderick Jones if that happens. But I think Dylan Cook did play well enough where I'd want to bring him back as this team's starting left tackle. He's dirt cheap. You're not paying him anything. But, I think a good question to ask is, could Pittsburgh bring in Rasheed Walker, somebody that was a really, solid swing tackle and starting player for the Green Bay Packers in his time there in Green Bay? Even shared a locker room with Aaron Rodgers for a season in 2022. Walker's still really cheap, guys. 26 years old, obviously a big body. And right now, the Athletic is projecting a 4-year contract worth exactly the same amount per year that Dan Moore Jr. got last year, $20.5 million per season. Now, Pro Football Focus has linked Walker as a potential fit here in Pittsburgh. This is what Mason Cameron from PFF has to say about the fit. Walker has excelled as a pass protector across 3 seasons as the Packers' starting left tackle, earning a 69-plus PFF pass blocking grade in each season. He's been particularly effective on quick passing concepts with his 84.4 PFF pass blocking grade on all 3-step drops, ranking 6th among all qualifying tackles over that span. That ability would fit well with the Steelers, particularly if Aaron Rodgers decides to return to the Steel City with Mike McCarthy named as the new head coach. In 2025, Rodgers posted the 4th fastest average time to throw at 2.59 seconds among quarterbacks with at least 200 dropbacks. Now, listen, man, I'm just going to tell you this right now. With the cap going up $22 million here in 2026, Walker's going to get more than what Dan Moore Jr. got last year, guys. He's going to get more than that $20.5 million per year. Obviously, offensive tackles and starting ones don't become available in free agency very often, and I think the league might have learned their lesson from what Tennessee did last year when they gave Dan Moore Jr. all that money, and he was Dan Moore Jr., and he wasn't a very good player for them. So I think that Rasheed Walker probably gets a lot of money from somebody because there's a lot of teams that need offensive tackle help, and he's easily the best guy available, in my opinion. And with the Steelers having a guy like Dylan Cook on the roster already, and then a backup option, in my opinion, in Broderick Jones there to compete with him, I think that for at least one more season here, I think that the Steelers are okay sticking with what they have at tackle. But what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Are you comfortable with Pittsburgh's options at left tackle heading into next season with Dylan Cook and Broderick Jones? Give me a yes or no down there in the comment section. Now, before I go here, I do want to give you guys those restructure candidates for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Steelers have a pretty decent amount of cap space at this point in time, but they could always look to add more, especially if Rodgers retires and they have to spend a little bit more on a quarterback like Malik Willis. They're going to have to find ways to create more cap space for the 2026 season. And I would say the 4 guys that you can look at, that you can save the most money with by restructuring, by the way, all these numbers come from over the cap. You can save $20.4 million by restructuring TJ Watt's deal. You can save nearly $18 million by restructuring DK Metcalf's deal. You can save about $6.5 million with Alex Highsmith's deal. That is if he doesn't get traded. And then Pat Freiermuth, you can save a little bit over $5 million if you restructure his deal. All right, that'll be it for today's show, guys. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. If we get breaking news, we will be going live if it's a big enough piece. If not, we'll just get a breaking news video out to you guys. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. First segment in the books. Coming up next are 2 free agency target videos, starting with the wide receiver position. All right, which wide receivers? I got 5 of my top guys that I think the Steelers are going to be targeting in free agency this year. And we'll go over a bunch of different options, guys, all right? We're going to turn over every stone in this next video. And then in our final video today, we'll get into the other positions that the Steelers need outside of receiver and quarterback, all right? Running back, safety, left guard, cornerback, all these nose tackle, all these positions that the Steelers are going to be looking to find help at. We are going to be getting into those here in just a second as well. So greatly appreciate your guys' support. Let me take a little bit of a drink. We will also make sure to get to all of your guys' super chats before we finish up today's live show. But let's get into our next segment right now. Some wide receiver free agency targets are coming at you right now. Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today we're going to be taking a look at the wide receiver free agency market. I'm going to be revealing my top 5 Steelers wide receiver targets for the 2026 offseason. We'll talk about a bunch of different options, but we'll start today's video by kind of breaking down what the Steelers should be looking for at the receiver position and then the top 5 guys that I think fit that bill. Now, before we get into the wide receiver free agency targets today, guys, make sure you check out our website here, chatsports.com/Steelers Talk. You guys have been asking for a long time for a channel branded t-shirt. Well, it's finally here, guys. You can wear this t-shirt on Steelers game days, whether you're at home or you're at Acrisure. You can wear this to Latrobe. In St. Vincent's there for training camp. You can wear it probably not at work, but you never know. So you guys can check us out here, $24.99 on our website right now. You guys have been asking for it for a while, so we got to prove to our bosses here that if you guys want more merch opportunities, that we can sell t-shirts here on Steelers Talk. So chatsports.com/Steelers Talk. Again, just $24.99 to get yours today. That link is down there in the comments and description of today's show if you guys would like to make a purchase. Now, I think that what the Steelers are going to do at the wide receiver position this year, and the two kind of quote-unquote big moves that the Steelers will make at this position this offseason, is number one, they're going to bring in some sort of legitimate veteran starter, whether it's via trade or whether it's via free agency. And then, once we get to the NFL draft, I think there's a very high possibility that they draft a high-end wide receiver prospect, probably in round 1, but maybe round 2 at the very latest, to kind of complete the wide receiver trio here in Pittsburgh alongside, of course, DK Metcalf. And, to kind of complete the right balance here, I think that, what the Steelers are going to be looking for is they're going to be looking to bring in a veteran guy that can start the season as this team's wide receiver 2, but can also operate as this team's wide receiver 3 if, the early round rookie, whether it's Mekhi Lemon, whether it's Jordan Tyson, whether it's Omar Cooper Jr., whether it's Casey Concepcion, if one of those guys balls out, it's going to be somebody that can maybe take a back seat and be a wide receiver 3 and would be okay with that kind of role here in the Steel City. So you got to strike that right balance there of somebody that's good enough to start the season as wide receiver 2, but maybe finish the season as wide receiver 3 if you're going to address this position in free agency. So coming up here on Steelers Talk, my top 5 Steelers free agency targets when it comes to the wide receiver position. That's coming up here in just a second. But first, what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. How will Pittsburgh acquire their veteran wide receiver this offseason? Do you think they make a trade for a wide receiver like A.J. Brown, or do you think they go to free agency to find that wide receiver too? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. Just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Poly Market. And while I tell you about our sponsor today, let me know T for trade or F for free agency. Before we continue on with the rest of today's show, let's see what I've been trading on Poly Market. During Week 18's Pittsburgh-Baltimore matchup in Week 18 from this past year, Poly Market only gave Pittsburgh a 38% chance to win that game, which I thought was crazy because of the history between Pittsburgh and Baltimore and how close these games always tend to be. So for that reason, I took Pittsburgh at 38% to win that game, and I won $263 on just $100. Plus, with Poly Market, you can trade trade in and out of momentum shifts without getting blocked or penalized. With in-game trading, once Pittsburgh gets up, you can either ride it all the way through to the end of the game for a bigger payout, or you can sell early. For example, if you bought Pittsburgh at 38% in this particular football game and sold at just 70%, you could have snagged a cool $184 payout. You can't do this with a traditional sports book, so get started today. Polymarket is legal in all 50 states. Download the app now to get to the top of the wait list. The only way to do that is by clicking my link in the description and comments. And a big thank you to Polymarket for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So we'll start our list here with a name that Steelers fans are very familiar with, and it is Aaron Rodgers' former teammate there in Green Bay, Romeo Doubs. Right now, the market value, according to The Athletic, is 4 years, $15.2 million per season. I think that's around the price point that the Steelers are going to be looking at. And Doubs is exactly the type of wide receiver the Steelers are looking at, somebody that's a big body but also can separate versus man coverage. He's a really good route runner, very snappy at the end at the top end of his routes, and he's still only 26 years old, right? 6'2", 204, so good size. But, this is somebody that has established chemistry with Aaron Rodgers as well. He's going to run routes the way that Rodgers wants them to be run, and somebody that Rodgers is going to trust on day one of Steelers training camp, let alone week one of the 2026 NFL season. And you guys can see here that Doubs has had, some decent success in his National Football League career. This past year was his best season at 724 yards on the year. That's almost 300 yards more than any other receiver on the Steelers roster last year. He also collected 6 touchdowns. As a big body guy, he collects quite a few touchdowns each and every season, and he's been able to stay relatively healthy. He does have a little bit of a drop issue, but I think that's a little bit of a trade-off that the Steelers might be willing to account for because of his connection with Aaron Rodgers, because of his ability to separate versus man coverage. If the Steelers are looking for like a true wide receiver 2 of the future, I think Romeo Doubs fits that description really, really well. But another guy that hasn't, at the time of me recording this video, has not been released yet, but is potentially expected to be released by the Colts, Michael Pittman Jr. If he hits the open market, I would be interested in Pittman for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, it's possible that Pittman gets traded, and maybe the Steelers are the team that trades for him, but right now, nobody has bitten on that cheese just yet, and I do think that it's possible that we get to free agency and the Colts feel obligated to let him go because, they need cap relief this year to pay for Daniel Jones and probably Alec Pierce as well. Now, Pittman is 28 years old, so he's getting up there, and he's never been like a terrific athlete. He's not going to be the downfield vertical threat for the Steelers offense if they get him, but he's a big body type of guy who's really, really good as a snappy route runner to the short and intermediate levels of the field. He's got really tough hands. He's a great red zone threat. And he's just a very, nifty wide receiver is the best way I can describe it, where, he's just really smart. He knows how to sit down in those zones. He's a good route runner that can separate. I think he's pretty snappy at the top of his routes. And, right now, his current contract is paying him $23.3 million per season. I'd be interested to see what he would actually get paid on the open market, but, I think that, around that $20 million range is probably what he would go for, and you guys can see what he's been able to do over the last several years, and, he's been a very good player, multiple touchdowns, 7 touchdowns just last year in the full 17-game schedule, but he had 80 catches, back in 2023. That was his best year with over 1,100 yards receiving and over 100 receptions, and, this is certainly somebody that is a wide receiver 2-esque wide receiver in my opinion. And I think that if the Steelers can get him and get him for a decent price tag, I think that he's more than worth it for the black and gold and would be a good complement to DK Metcalf on the other side. Then we get to Jauan Jennings, who we've talked about on this channel before as a potential trade target and all these different things. He's had some quarrels with the San Francisco 49ers in recent years. Right now, The Athletic projects his next contract at 29 years old as a 3-year deal worth $14 million per season. Now, Jennings, I think in the previous regime here in Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith, who really values receivers that can run block, I think that he would have been the perfect fit for the Arthur Smith offense, but I still think he would fit in Mike McCarthy's system here where, he's a big body route runner, very similar to Michael Pittman Jr. in that way where they're not fast guys, but they are very nuanced route runners. They have great footwork, and they get open. They make tough catches, man, and Juwan is somebody that I've had my eye on for a while, and you guys can see here over the last 4 years, he's had some good years, he's had some down years, but, when Brandon Ayuk went down with his injury in 2024, he became the 49ers' number one receiving weapon and nearly got to 1,000 yards receiving. Over the last 2 years, he's collected 15 touchdowns, so this is a legitimate big boy receiver, but at the end of the day, he's 29, he's kind of used to being almost like a wide receiver 3. Like if the Steelers bring him in as a wide receiver 2 to start the season, but then like Jordan Tyson plays awesome in year 1 or something like that, I don't think Jennings is going to be out of place as a wide receiver 3 either. But then Calvin Ridley, another guy that hasn't been released at the time of me recording this video, but another guy that I expect to be released by the time we get to free agency. Right now, the market value on him would be unknown, but Ridley was somebody that I was interested in as a potential trade target last year at the deadline. He didn't have the best of times there with Cam Ward last season, but he still has that great combination of size, speed, and route running ability that would maybe make him the ideal wide receiver 2 here in Pittsburgh. Now, his current contract pays him $23 million per season. I think if he hits the market, he will get less than that. I think that's a big reason why Tennessee might be letting him go. But last year, just 303 yards in just 7 games played, dealt with injuries as well. But he's been one of those guys over the last 2 years in particular where, he is super efficient. 17.8 yards per reception last year, 15.9 working with Will Levis in 2024, had over 1,000 yards in both 2024 and 2023, racked up quite a few touchdowns as well, and pairing him up as a really dynamic route runner with DK Metcalf could be a really good fit if the Steelers are looking for a veteran wide receiver 2 at a pretty decent price point. But then the final name I'll talk about here is kind of a different type of receiver than the other guys that are on the list here, but Deebo Samuel is somebody that I don't want people to sleep on here, okay? And right now, The Athletic projects his contract at 1 year, $12.5 million. That's probably what the Steelers are looking to pay on the free agency market, especially if they're looking to draft a receiver in round 1. Deebo's 30 years old, and he's certainly had his better days. He has lost a step athletically, but he, despite that, is still one of the top run-after-catch threats in the NFL today. He's still awesome at it. He can still align anywhere from outside to the slot to even in the backfield. He's got better hands than he gets credit for. And Pittsburgh has actually attempted to acquire Deebo Samuel via trade multiple times in the past, including at the NFL trade deadline last year. And apparently the Washington Commanders just didn't want to let him go for some reason. But the issue with Deebo, guys, is that he isn't a route runner. And that's probably what you're saying at home. But Jack, we need a route runner to separate versus man coverage. And I completely agree with you on that. That is Deebo's issue. But you could get that guy in the NFL draft. Like, there's a number of awesome route runners that you can get in round 1 of the NFL draft this year. And the thing about Deebo is that he is, an awesome rack threat, run after catch. And as we know, if Aaron Rodgers is going to be returning here, he likes those quick dump offs. He likes those wide receiver screens. He likes those crossing routes. And that's exactly what Deebo Samuel loves to do. So if you have DK Metcalf, who's like a vertical threat and a yak threat, big body dude, then you got Deebo Samuel, another big body guy that's a great run after catch threat. And then you can add an awesome dynamic route running threat in the draft. That would complete a wide receiver trio that could really work with a skill set like Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback position. And at the end of the day, guys, I don't want anyone to be surprised if Deebo Samuel becomes a Pittsburgh Steeler this year, especially if the price point is where it's at with The Athletic right now at $12.5 million, right? And it's just a 1-year deal. So at the end of this year, Rodgers probably retires, Deebo moves on, and then you have another opening in the wide receiver position. But you got DK, you've got your round 1 wide receiver, and then you can, add another guy in the 2027 offseason. That shouldn't be that difficult to do. But in terms of the 2026 season, I think Deebo Samuel makes a lot of sense for this football team. But then some other wide receiver possibilities. I wouldn't consider any of these guys as like wide receiver 2s. I would put these guys more in the wide receiver 3 categories. Like maybe you bring in one of these guys as a wide receiver 3, and then, you're expecting that round 1 rookie to be your number 2 receiver right away, whether it's Mekhi Lemon, whether it's Jordan Tyson, whether it's Omar Cooper Jr. Like Darnell Mooney and Holly Hollywood Brown, those two guys, and I would also include Tyquan Thornton, are awesome, fast vertical threats that would be really good number 3 options in the Steelers offense. Jalen Tolbert, apparently Mike McCarthy's really high on him. If you can get him for like the vet minimum, could see him being a depth piece. Christian Kirk is a good slot weapon, and Brandon Cooks actually showed some good things with Josh Allen and the Bills towards the end of last season, and he had some really good years with Mike McCarthy in Dallas. It wouldn't shock me if the Steelers bring him in as a rotational depth piece in the receiver room for the vet minimum. But, of course, the Steelers could also bring back Calvin Austin III. That's always going to be an option. Now, I do think Calvin is probably hunting, as big of a contract as he can get. He just hired Drew Rosenhaus as his agent, which usually means I'm trying to get paid this offseason. So we'll see where Calvin ends up. He's, a shifty guy. He's got some good speed to him. He's a spot guy where he can really make some big plays for you, and he's awesome on special teams. But I think he proved last year he's nothing close to a wide receiver 2, and I think he's going to want to get paid like a wide receiver 2 this offseason. Don't think the Steelers are going to bite on that. Now, I want to talk about some options here that I'm probably not super interested in, but names that you've probably heard connected to the Steelers. These 3 guys right here: Tyreek Hill coming off that massive knee injury, Brandon Ayuk also coming off a massive knee injury and has off-field issues. And then Stephon Diggs dealing currently with some legal issues. All these guys are good players when they're healthy and they're on the field, and they can help the Pittsburgh Steelers from a football perspective. I just don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze in terms of what you have to deal with these guys off the field, personality-wise, all that different stuff, and not to mention the injuries, specifically to Hill and Ayuk. I'm probably passing on pursuing these guys in free agency this year. But then there's guys that I believe are going to be too expensive for the roles that they would have to play here in Pittsburgh. Alec Pierce from the Colts is about to get an absolute bag from somebody. Right now, The Athletic projects a $25.5 million per year contract for him. It would not shock me if he gets more than that on the open market, because there's not a ton of high-end receivers that are really young on the open market this year. Pierce is going to be one of the top, if not the top receivers that you're going to hear his name called on Monday, probably to somebody. But he's a deep threat. He's not much of a true route runner, which is something that I think the Steelers need. And if the Steelers are just going to get a true deep threat, I think there's a lot of guys that are much cheaper that can do something very similar to Alec Pierce, maybe at a smaller size, but can do a similar function. Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants, I think he had a lot of inflated stats last year because, the Malik Neighbors went down with an injury and all this different stuff. I think he's a decent slot number 3 weapon, but right now, 3 years, $16 million per season is just too much for me, guys. Rashid Shaheed, somebody that I would like to bring in as a wide receiver 3, as that true deep threat. I think he's a better version of Calvin Austin III. But for $13 million per season, that's a bit too rich for me. And then Jalen Naylor, somebody that I consider, an okay wide receiver 3, showed some good things on tape last year for Minnesota. It has the connection with Brian Angelico, our new offensive coordinator, but $12 million per season for Naylor is too much. I saw KJ Osborne play really well in that Vikings offense because Justin Jefferson and the guys around him, and then he goes somewhere else and he's just not a good football player. I'm worried that we see a similar dip in Naylor's game once he gets outside of that Vikings offense. But predict it for me down there in the comment section. Which veteran receiver does Pittsburgh add to the starting lineup this offseason? And this can be trade or free agent here, guys. Do you think they trade for A.J. Brown? Do you think they trade for Brian Thomas Jr.? Do they sign Deebo Samuel or Romeo Dobbs? Who is your guy? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. That'll be it for today's show here on Steelers Talk. I appreciate you guys stopping by here today. Of course, if any breaking news action happens over the course of the day here, we're going to have you covered here on Steelers Talk. So if you don't want to miss any of that, click that subscribe button if you haven't already. 2 segments in. We got one more to go here, Steelers Nation. And we just talked about the wide receivers, okay? We've talked about quarterbacks ad nauseum on this channel, as you guys know, over the last several weeks. Now let's talk about some of those other positions that the Steelers could look to add some veteran help in free agency. I'm talking about safety. I'm talking about cornerback, nose tackle, left guard, running back, all right? Some of these other positions that the Steelers need some help in this offseason. We're going to be breaking it all down here in just a second. What do you think, Ponzi, in terms of these free agency targets? Do you like the Deebo Samuel idea? Do you like the Juwan Jennings idea? Calvin Ridley, Michael Pittman, Romeo Doubs? Like, out of that group there, which one makes the most sense to you?
I mean, I think, Romeo Doubs is a clear runaway favorite in that. Experience with Rodgers, although it was short. I think, he apparently called the Packers at the beginning of the year to inquire about the availability of Doubs.
Yep.
So, I think he wants Doubs. I think, Doubs would flourish in a system like this. But, if Rodgers doesn't come back and, maybe they don't even get Doubs, I could see a Juwan Jennings being that guy.
I would say the most likely scenario is they get Doubs. And I think they get him for, a decent contract. It's not going to be anything crazy. It might get to 20, maybe, but I don't know. He hasn't been a perfect player in his career to this point. He has had some drop issues and stuff like that. But if you're looking for that man-to-man separator with chemistry with Rodgers, somebody that Rodgers wants on the football team, that is somebody that just makes a ton of sense for the Steelers. Now, maybe they run into a deal that they really like for A.J. Brown or Brian Thomas Jr. or maybe Jalen Waddle or one of these guys that is being rumored in the trade mill right now. But, I think that Romeo Doubs is certainly probably their number one choice, and I think that's probably the most realistic and most likely choice. But if that doesn't work out, like I said, if Pittman gets released, if Ridley gets released, those are two veteran options I'm interested in. Juwan Jennings, you guys know I've been a big fan of his for a long time. I think Deebo fits what the Steelers want to do offensively next year. You just have to make sure you get an awesome route runner in the draft if you get Deebo. That's just the one thing. And then if that route runner gets injured, you're going to have to get creative. So, I think it's going to be an interesting next week or so. But, I think that it's going to be a lot of fun. And
I think, no matter what, I think the Steelers, sign 2 wide receivers this year. So I think, they get Jalen Tolbert, Romeo Doubs, or Juwan Jennings. I think Jalen Tolbert's probably going to be penciled in because I think McCarthy really likes Tolbert. He really does.
Yeah, maybe, man. And as a fourth option, you could do worse than him. He's just okay at a lot of things. He's not really, he doesn't really have anything about his game that you say, man, he's really good at this.
And for the record, he was the Cowboys' kind of wide receiver 3-4. I think he was really more the 3. He stepped up to the 2, of course, a couple times. Obviously, had that game-winning touchdown against the Steelers 2 years ago. But I think, Tolbert is one of those guys that's going to be kind of penciled into the Steelers because, McCarthy really likes him. I think, he flourishes well in a McCarthy system. I think, you could do worse than wide receiver 4, but I'd also like to see them draft another wide receiver as well.
Yeah,
I think, no matter what.
I actually think where they fill that other receiver spot is in the draft.
I would hope so.
I think they only get one veteran receiver this year. And then I think they draft 2 rookies. One of them to start pretty much immediately. The other one to be a rotational piece year 1 that can eventually, potentially become a full-time starter.
I would say that too. I would like that route. But I don't know, man. I feel like, Omar Khan might just go 1 wide receiver. And I think that's something you cannot do, especially in this class. But, if they do get 2 free agent wide receivers.
You got 12 draft picks, man.
I mean, that's what I'm saying, man.
There's some good depth. You can get a good receiver on one of your day 3 picks.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Just fill out the wide receiver room with one more body. That's a young guy that's got some upside, that's got some traits that can be developed and hopefully eventually take over a starting spot. You're only drafting 1 receiver this year to be a full-time starter. It's going to be your first or second round pick, probably your first rounder. And then, once you see a value somewhere, maybe late day 2 or, somewhere on day 3, that you can bring in as a 4th receiver option that, has some starter upside, I think that's probably how they're going to do it. And I think that's the smart way to do it. So the question for this next week at this position is going to be, what do they do at veteran receiver? How many do they sign and who are the players, right? And it could go a bunch of different ways. A.J. Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., Romeo Doubs, Deebo Samuel. There's a lot of different ways that this thing could go, but there's a lot of good options out there. It's not like you're choosing between a bunch of bad options like you did last season. You have a chance to restart this thing and really rebuild this wide receiver room, and you got the cap space to make it happen. You got the draft picks to make it happen. I've said it time and time again. Omar Khan has to get this receiver room right this year, or I would start thinking about his future with the football team, because it's like
exactly.
It's just
We
been
can't
so
have
bad.
Another Jonnu Smith.
It's just been so bad these last 2 years at wide receiver. It's been a glaring need. They haven't been able to get it right. You got to be able to get it right this year. Period. If they don't do it, Omar seriously needs. We need to have some serious conversations about Omar if they can't get this right this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, we take a look back. Obviously, Jonnu was cut, and I think that was kind of be the wide receiver 2, fix for the Steelers, and it's been bad. It's been good. Some of the worst moves that we've seen, and from the last 3 of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is the last 3 years. This was their solution at the receiver position.
Or wide receiver 2.
Allen Robinson, who was a traffic cone. Van Jefferson, who just was nothing all season long.
A little bit worse than a traffic cone.
And then, I think Jefferson played slightly better than Robinson in terms of the production. But then you need a number 2 receiver heading into the year, and what do? Let's add another fucking tight end for Arthur Smith, Jonnu Smith, who doesn't do jack shit for us all year.
But Arthur Smith loves him.
You can't make this level of mistake again this year. You have to get it right, all right? And these 3 guys have been pretty bad stains on the career of Omar Khan as this team's GM, and he needs to do a better job moving forward.
My worst fear is they sign a Jalen Tolbert, and they sign that, and they're like, that's it, that's good, we're good, and they don't even draft wide receiver high. They maybe take 1 wide receiver in round 3, and they're our wide receiver issues are fixed, and it's that's just not how we're gonna do things. I understand, you go into the draft obviously, and you have free agency to shape your draft, but I don't know, man. I feel this is a good free agency class to
good enough.
Get solid depth.
Well, I think it's a good receiver class for what the Steelers need
exactly,
at the
depth.
position. You look at what do the Steelers need, right? They need somebody that can come in that's a veteran, that can assume a wide receiver 2 role, but is ideally your wide receiver 3, because you're hoping your round 1 receiver is a stud right away. And guys like that are plentiful in this class.
Yeah.
You got Romeo Doubs, and you've got Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings, and Darnell Mooney. There's a good handful of these players
they're
that
gonna come expensive, too expensive.
Who expensive?
I was saying they're not gonna be too expensive.
Yeah, they won't be. Darnell will go for a decent amount. I think Juwan goes for a decent amount. Romeo will go for a decent amount. But and then Deebo for a 1-year contract, $12.5 million. I think
Might be cheap.
The Steelers would sign up for that in a second, I think. But I guess we'll just have to see. All right, we got one more segment here, guys. We got other positions to talk about with our free agency targets. But before we get into those, let's have a word from. I guess you guys are sponsoring us a little bit here. Our super chats. Bernard says, "Where do you rank Aaron Rodgers?" Do I have a Venmo? No Venmos. So if you sent me a Venmo, I don't have it. Okay. But in terms of where I rank Aaron Rodgers, the thing is, most people's perceptions of quarterbacks are with the supporting cast that they currently have. You know what I'm saying? For example, if you switch Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford on the teams, okay? So Stafford was a Steeler, Rodgers was a Ram. Who has the better season? I would argue Rodgers has the better season, but Matthew Stafford's the better quarterback. I don't think Aaron Rodgers wins MVP on the Rams last year. I still think they're a very good football team, and I think Rodgers has a better season with the Rams than he would have had here in Pittsburgh. But football is such a game where it's if you're a quarterback in a bad situation, it's going to be tough to succeed. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. If you've got issues with the supporting cast around you, play calling, pass protection, receivers that can't get open, that was Rodgers' big issue last year, you're gonna have limitations, man, especially if you're a non-mobile pocket passer like Rodgers. So when I just look at the skill sets in a vacuum, I'd probably put Rodgers somewhere around 15th in the league. All right, like somewhere in like middle of the pack. Now, the thing is, if you have a really good supporting cast around a middle of the pack talent, like a good processor that has good arm talent, that can operate the offense, but maybe isn't going to make a lot of plays out of structure for you. Like that's like a league average starter to me. And that's where I think Rodgers is at. But if you give him a really good supporting cast, if you give him a good play caller that knows what he's doing and is an upgrade over Arthur Smith, which I think the Steelers already have, if you give him a good defense to support him, like you can win a Super Bowl with one of these quote-unquote good quarterbacks, all right? I would say Jalen Hurts, Sam Darnold, in similar tiers to Aaron Rodgers talent-wise. But they've had great elite supporting casts around them over the last 2 seasons, and those have been the last 2 guys to win Super Bowls. Now, would I take Sam Darnold over Aaron Rodgers today? Probably. Yes, I would. Jalen Hurts is a different conversation. He's got his limitations for sure. He's definitely more mobile, but you guys get my point. Like, teams can win Super Bowls with good starting quarterbacks. You don't necessarily need an elite or a great quarterback to win Super Bowls nowadays. Like, you can win with a non-mobile pocket passer with excellent football intelligence, awesome arm talent, as long as they have an excellent supporting cast around them. And I think that the Steelers are not that far away from surrounding their quarterback with that excellent supporting cast. Like, wide receiver is a big thing they got to fix this offseason. You got to hit on corner and safety, and we'll talk about some of the players the Steelers can target here in a second, but that's where, I'd probably rank Rodgers in that kind of tier 3, kind of middle of the pack starter type of realm. But I still think he can be a very productive and good starting quarterback, especially if you surround him with the right players around him. All right, so now let's get into our final segment of the day. For general free agency targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers is coming at you right now. Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today we've got some general 2026 free agency targets. Free agency is right around the corner here, guys. It's just a few days away. And, we've talked about quarterbacks, and we've talked about a lot about wide receivers on this show over the last few weeks or so, but we haven't talked a lot, or at least not a ton, about some of the other positions that the Steelers could be looking for some free agency help this year, and that's what we're going to be doing on today's show. So we're going to be discussing cornerback targets, safety targets, nose tackle targets, left guard targets, and running back targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Another position that they could also be looking at is linebacker if they cut Patrick Queen, but at the time of me recording this video, they have not cut Patrick Queen, and if they're not going to cut any of their current linebackers, I don't think they're gonna sign one in free agency. So maybe that's a position that pops up here, but at the time of me recording this video, it is not something that I think the Steelers are going to be looking at in free agency. You guys can check out our wide receiver free agency targets video that we put out yesterday here. If you guys want to check that out, I'll put the chip to that one in the top right of today's program. And also make sure you guys click that subscribe button for all of our free agency coverage over this next week. All right, we're going to be going live for probably the first at least 3 days of free agency, maybe the first 4, depending on how the market is shaping up and if Aaron Rodgers has made his decision. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Join us for our free agency coverage. We'll be taking super chat questions. We'll be having breaking news coverage of every single signing that the Pittsburgh Steelers make, every single trade that they make. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because this is going to be your home for Steelers free agency here in 2026. All right, so now let's start with the cornerback position. And what I'm going to do here, guys, is that for each position, I'm going to tell you what I think the Steelers are going to be looking for, and then we'll look at the targets that fit that mold. So let's have a chat here about what the Steelers are going to be looking for at cornerback this year. And obviously you got Joey Porter Jr. as your legit number 1 shutdown corner. But what this team is going to be looking for is a solid veteran CB2 on a modest, likely short-term contract, all right? Probably 1 or 2 years, and I think that they're eventually going to draft a corner relatively early in the NFL draft this year to eventually replace this veteran that they sign this offseason. Now, I think the Steelers' preference is to re-sign either James Pierre Pierre or Asante Samuel Jr. Okay, both of these guys were on the team last year. They liked working with these guys. They both played relatively well. And this is Omar Khan, the Steelers GM at the NFL Combine, stating that he would like to re-sign one of these gentlemen.
I'd say all options are on the table right now. Both players are free agents, like you mentioned, and both players are. We'd like to have both of them back. We'll see how it shakes out.
Now, personally, if I have a choice between these two guys, I'm going to bring back James Pierre. All right, first of all, Pierre doesn't have the injury stuff that Asante Samuel Jr. has, but also he's bigger, he's longer, he's more physical. I think he's a better pure man-to-man corner. I know Patrick Graham is going to want to run a lot of different types of schemes here in Pittsburgh, and he's going to want to keep, the versatility of the personnel of this roster intact. With Asante Samuel Jr., I think that you're maybe limiting what your CB2 is going to be capable of doing from a schematic standpoint. But I also don't think James Pierre is going to be that expensive either. Like, you look at The Athletic and Pro Football Focus and ESPN, none of these guys rank this guy in like the top 100 or even top 150 in their free agency rankings this year, which means the Steelers might be, able to bring back James Pierre, somebody that was a really good corner. He was the number 2 graded corner in all of football last year for like less than $5 million per season. I think that is like an ideal situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers at CB2. But a couple of options that do have connections to the Steelers coaching staff out there in free agency that shouldn't be too expensive. Eric Stokes, he played for the Raiders under Patrick Graham last season, and they brought him into free agency and they liked him quite a bit. And then Trayvon Diggs has worked with Jason Simmons and Joe Witt Jr., the secondaries coaches here in Pittsburgh. Obviously, he's still relatively young. I believe he's 27 years old. He shouldn't be that expensive to bring in. And I do like Diggs better as a number 2 corner than as a number 1 guy. But honestly, I would rather have James Pierre than either one of these free agents that the Steelers could potentially grab. I would also guess that Pittsburgh drafts a corner on day 2 this year, just so you guys know. I think that's going to be a 1 or 2 year contract for, Pierre or ASJ. And then, I think the Combine formal meetings speak for themselves. You guys can take a look at all the corners that they talked to. They talked with 9 of them formally, and, it's different tiers, right? They talked with all the guys that are expected to go in round 1. And then, they talked with a lot of guys that are going to be expected to go round 2, and then a couple guys that are expected to go round 3. Like, they obviously have interest, in all the early rounds. I do think that by the end of day 2, so by the end of round 3 this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers will probably take some sort of corner to fill out their defensive backfield, especially, with their depth. And don't forget, we have Brandon Echols, who can play inside or out, that is still on this roster and is a nice, valuable depth piece for this secondary as well. Now, sticking with the secondary here, what is Pittsburgh going to be looking for at the safety position? Well, for me, I think they're going to be looking for a starting caliber veteran that's capable of playing free safety if asked. Because right now, you've got Jalen Ramsey, you've got Deshaun Elliott, neither of which are a true free safety that's capable of playing, single high, being the one guy responsible for center field responsibilities. Like Ramsey, I think, it's commendable what he did moving over to safety last year when this team needed it. And he played some good football there. Some of it, you could tell it was a corner trying to play safety, and he was learning a position pretty much midway through the year. I think he goes back to big nickel this year, where he can be super impactful. And as long as the Steelers aren't asking him to guard Jamar Chase one-on-one like Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin were in the beginning of last season, I still think he's super instinctual. He's still one of the best run-defending corners in football. Incredible tackler, great blitzer, anticipatory defender over the middle of the field. Like, I still think in a league that's really starting to be dominated by big nickel defenses, Jalen Ramsey is an asset for the Pittsburgh Steelers that it seems like they're going to keep around. So that means you got Deshaun Elliott, who's your box safety, and now you got to get somebody to play that free safety spot in this big nickel defense that I expect Patrick Graham to implement. And there's some really good options out there, man. Here are the top 5 safety targets that I would have for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Brian Cook was really good for the Kansas City Chiefs over these last several years. He's expected to be the top of the market guy at 13 and $1.3 million per season over 3 years. Kobe Bryant also played very well for the dark side defense in Seattle this year. He's a converted corner that switched to safety this year, played very well for that defense. Kevin Byard is a turnover machine as one of the best free safeties over the last decade in the National Football League. He played at a very high level there in Chicago, but he is a little bit of an age risk. He is 33. Jalen Thompson has played some good football for the Arizona Cardinals, and then Alohi Gilman has played in a lot of these big nickel, three safety type of defenses in LA and in Baltimore. I could certainly see him being a value option for the Pittsburgh Steelers if they want to bring him in. But some other possibilities here. Cam Curl, the reason why I don't add him to my top 5 is because he's not a true free safety. He's a really good tackler, and he's really good around the line of scrimmage and stuff like that, but he doesn't have the juice necessarily to play a true free safety. Jaquan Brisker is similar in that regard. He's got some tackling issues. He's inconsistent in coverage. Now, I know Brisker's a favorite of Steelers fans because he's from Pittsburgh, but I don't think that that's going to be a terrific fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nick Cross, again, more of a box safety that's got some versatility, great athleticism. I mean, he could play free safety, but he just hasn't been asked to do it a whole lot in Indianapolis. Reed Blankenship, again, more of a fit for the quarter style defenses. Jalen Hawkins had a good year in New England. That's one that I'm slightly interested in. Donovan Wilson is a name to monitor just because he played under Mike McCarthy in Dallas, and now he's a free agent. He could be a stopgap if the Steelers want to take a safety early in the NFL draft. Jimmy Ward is a longtime veteran that just got released by Houston. And then Jamal Adams, who was kind of like a safety linebacker hybrid player in Patrick Graham's defense for the Raiders last year, actually had the best year of his career over the last several seasons in Las Vegas. He might follow Patrick Graham here to Pittsburgh. Definitely keep your eye on Jamal Adams. But I also bet that Pittsburgh drafts a safety in this year's NFL draft as well. Now, it might not be as early as corner or wide receiver, for example, but I do think that they will draft a safety of some kind with one of their 12 draft picks that they have this year. It could be like a round 1 or round 2 thing if they really like Dylan Thieneman or if Caleb Downs falls or something like that. But I would say probably more towards the round 3 conversation is where I think the safety stuff starts for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So keep your eye on that as well. So pick a pair of defensive backs for me down there in the comments section. Pick a corner and then pick a safety that you'd like to see the Steelers sign in free agency. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today. Well, I'll tell you about our sponsor today. Let me know a corner and a safety you want the Steelers to sign this year. And if you guys want to get a Steelers Talk branded t-shirt, we finally have some merch for you guys available for you on our website, chatsports.com/Steelers Talk. This t-shirt is perfect if you want me to identify you at Steelers training camp with my annual training camp trip in Latrobe, or if you want to wear it during our watch parties on Steelers game days, if you want to rep it at Acrisure Stadium, probably when it's not super cold outside. But, this is a t-shirt, guys, that you guys can wear around the house. You guys can wear outside and rep the channel and show your support. It's only $24.99 on our website right now. Our bosses tell us that the more of these babies that we sell, the more merch opportunities we are going to get here on Steelers Talk when we acquire new players and when there's new nicknames that are given to players and all that different stuff. So if you guys want more fun t-shirt opportunities here on Steelers Talk and you want to rep the channel, chatsports.com/Steelers Talk. That link is down there in the comments and description of today's show. Just click that link. It'll take you right to our website where you can make a purchase today. So greatly appreciate your guys' support. All right, so now let's talk about what the Steelers are going to be looking for at nose tackle, okay? I think what they're going to be looking for there is a proven veteran run stuffer that can be Pittsburgh's plug-and-play starter on early downs, okay? Somebody that can hold the line of scrimmage, somebody that doesn't get driven backwards, somebody that can anchor. I don't necessarily need somebody that's going to get to the quarterback and be disruptive. We've got awesome pass rushers. We've got great edge rushers and great interior pass rushers as well. And frankly, guys, the truth is Keanu Benton is one of the worst examples of Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin miscasting a player because Keanu Benton, even going back to Wisconsin, he doesn't anchor well against double teams. Like, he's so much better using his quick hands and his athleticism and his get-off to get into the backfield and make plays that way. But what they asked him to do was play in the middle of the defense and take on double teams and anchor, and very consistently would be driven backwards, creating massive holes in the middle of the Steelers' run defense. It's a big reason why this run defense has been lackluster lackluster here in Pittsburgh the last several years, and I hope that Patrick Graham's going to fix this issue, okay? And I'm hoping Keanu Benson can be maybe, the other starting 4I when Cam Hayward eventually retires, because he is very disruptive. He is a very good football player. I just think he's been used in the wrong way under the previous regime, and now it's time to fix that wrong by getting a legit nose tackle here in Pittsburgh. The top 5 guys that I have my eye on, Kyrus Tonga, who was the nose tackle for New England this year, was absolutely awesome, man. Like, he was a big part of their defense this year and their run defense. I would love for him to be in the middle of the Steelers' defensive line this year. Deshaun Hand is a really good run defender that can anchor, even though he's not like as big as some of these nose tackles are. He's only like 305 pounds. He's not like 330, but he's very good anchoring against the run, one of the better run defending DTs in the league, in my opinion. Roy Lopez is a solid veteran nose tackle as well. Tim Settle did a good job for the Houston Texans in the middle of their defense, and Sebastian Joseph Day is a veteran that's done a pretty decent job as a nose tackle throughout his career as well. But I would also like to see the Steelers bring back Daniel Ekuale as a backup nose tackle. I think he did a really good job last year before his injury. I'd like to see what he looks like in the black and gold again next year as a rotational piece and as a piece that's got some chemistry with the players that already exist here on the Steelers defensive line. And when the nose tackle that they bring in, the veteran, gets a little tired, they can bring in Ekuale as a rotational piece. I think I liked a lot of the stuff that he did last year, and he would probably be very cheap on the market coming off of that injury. I'd also say don't be surprised if Pittsburgh drafts a nose tackle as well. Like, maybe they decide not to bring back Ekuale after his injury last year, and maybe they want to bring in a nose tackle. They did talk with some at the NFL Combine, specifically early rounders, guys like Darrell Jackson from Florida State, Keenan McDonald from Ohio State, Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. Like, they're interested in some of these draft prospects at nose tackle as well. So just keep your eye on that. Now we'll shift to the offensive side of the ball, where left guard is definitely a big question mark for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I think what the Steelers should be looking for at this position is a starting caliber guard that can act as pretty much an elder statesman in this offensive line, because the Steelers' offensive line is still very young, right? Frazier's going into his third year. McCormick's going into his third year. Fautano's going into his third year. Dylan Cook is still very young. Obviously, Broderick's still a young guy. And I love Sayamalo in this group because he was the older guy that's in his 30s that was kind of that elder statesman that was still a really good football player. And it's still possible that the Steelers could bring back Isaac Sayamalo. I do include him on my top 5 left guard targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. Another guy to keep in mind is Elton Jenkins from the Green Bay Packers. He can play center. He can play guard. He's played some tackle. He's played with Aaron Rodgers before. He's actually very close with Rodgers, so keep your eye on Jenkins. Right now, the market value, according to Spotrac, for him is $15.2 million per year, so he wouldn't be cheap, but he would be a good option. I would also say keep your eye on Connor McGovern, who is a Mike McCarthy guy. He was there in Dallas when McCarthy was with the Cowboys, and he's a bit cheaper, $11 million per season. He's played center as well, so he's got that versatility. John Simpson protected Aaron Rodgers there for a year with the New York Jets. Brock Hoffman was another McCarthy guy that was brought in 2022 as a UDFA, somebody that I've been told to keep your eye on for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially as a depth piece, because he is expected to come at a pretty good price point for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the vet minimum. But some other possibilities that the Steelers could look at: Joel Bitonio, a longtime left guard for the Cleveland Browns, is slated to hit the open market, and at a 1-year, $6.5 million price point, that's a pretty good value for somebody that's a former Pro Bowler and played pretty well last year. I'd say he's probably their best offensive lineman last year in Cleveland. Then David Edwards is a longtime left guard in this league, veteran piece you could get for about $11 million per season. That's maybe a little bit too much for Edwards, in my opinion. And then Zeitler, has been to a lot of different places. He's been a high grader everywhere he's gone. Even at age 36, he's still kicking, and he's a value at just $5 million if you want to bring him in. But personally, guys, I'd like to just bring back Isaac Sayamalo. Like, I don't understand why it just seems like a foregone conclusion that the Steelers are not bringing him back. Maybe the Steelers just don't want to spend that kind of money to bring him back at this position. and they want to, maybe save some money. But like Seumalo, like a really good player. I know he's dealt with some injuries as of late, and I know he's getting older, but like when he's on the field, he's awesome. And he's, that elder statesman that I want among this young group of offensive linemen. And not only that, but you keep the continuity in place. Like if you bring back Seumalo and Cook starts next year, like the same offensive line that started the playoff game will be starting week 1 next year. That matters in the National Football League. So personally, I'd bring back Seumalo. $14 million per season is not, terribly too much for me. And I'd love to see Seumalo back in the black and gold next year. Now, the final position we'll talk about today is running back. And I think what the Steelers are going to be looking for at this position is RB2 competition with Caleb Johnson and kind of to push Caleb to, get the most out of him this upcoming season with a third down back skill set, because I think Jaylen Warren has solidified himself as this team's number 1 running back. He's absolutely awesome, maybe the most underrated running back in football, in my opinion. And you just got to get him, a nice, solid number 2 piece. Now, my preferred option would be to bring back Kenneth Gainwell, because right now, like nobody really thinks that he's like a top-end running back, free agency target. The Athletic only projects his contract at 2 years, $5 million a year. I'm doing that every single time. I mean, Gainwell and Warren were the best thing about this Steelers offense last year for just $5 million, getting that duo back together. I think that's a no-brainer for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but some other options that are out there, Rachaad White, it would be a little bit more expensive than Gainwell, so it's like, why don't you bring back Gainwell at that point? But then Rico Dowdle has a connection to McCarthy, obviously. He'd be a little bit more expensive as well. And then Aaron Jones is a name to keep your eye on. Very good friends with Aaron Rodgers. He's been one of the better receiving backs in the league for a long time, and he would cost pretty much nothing, the vet minimum. So keep Aaron Jones in mind if the Steelers can't bring back Kenneth Gainwell. But for me, guys, at that price point in particular, like as long as the price tag doesn't get out of control for Kenneth Gainwell, like I'm bringing him back. I think that's a no-brainer, especially if you want to lure Aaron Rodgers back to be your quarterback next year. Like he was obviously very, very fond of KG, and he was awesome as a receiver and, as a check down option and all these different things. And I just think that he's a great fit for McCarthy's offense as well. Big-time playmaker, team MVP from last season. If it only costs $5 million to bring this guy back, the Steelers have to bring him back, period. Who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comments section. Which non-wide receiver do you want the Steelers to sign in free agency? And you know what? We're going to actually make this non-wide receiver or quarterback, all right? We're going to just forget about quarterback and receiver for a second here. Outside of those 2 positions, who do you want to see the Steelers sign in free agency this year? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section, and that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. Thank you guys so much for stopping by here today. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers. All right, we'll catch up on some Super Chats. We just got the one. All right, so we'll just do the one, and then we'll get out of here. Bernard Nixon with a 5 says people want to talk about Rodgers being the problem. Jonnu held the offense back. Well, I don't think it was just Jonnu, but he was definitely a part of the problem. Like, it was the weaponry at large, the usage and the personnel that was brought in. Like, dude, like Pat Freiermuth was your second best receiving option on the team, and Jonnu Smith, who was a nothing burger last year, gets more snaps than him. That makes no fucking sense, right? Like that's just an Arthur Smith special right there. And you have Calvin Austin who can't survive contact down the field, and Roman Wilson who can't time his routes correctly to the quarterback's timing, and DK getting doubled, and Adam Thielen being brought in who has no juice left, and MVS who obviously, he was MVS. It wasn't great. So I just don't understand the thinking of Aaron Rodgers was the thing that held the Steelers offense back last year. In fact, I think if you have a Mason Rudolph in there at quarterback next year, somebody that's like an okay spot starter, if he would have been paired with that wide receiver room last year, guys, we would have won 3 or 4 games, in my opinion. Like, it would have been that bad. Because it's like when you combine a quarterback of Mason Rudolph's caliber with a receiver room that's that bad, that doesn't get open down the field, like you're just not going to be able to move the ball unless you're running it, period. And if you can't pass it down the field in any capacity, defenses are not going to respect the run. So, I don't think Kenneth Gainwell has as good of a season as he had last year without Aaron Rodgers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think Jaylen Warren has as good of a season as he had last year without Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Darnell Washington has as good of a season as he had last year without Aaron Rodgers. You know? So I think, obviously, we've all identified wide receiver and usage of the tight ends have been a big issue with this offense in the Arthur Smith era. Guess what? Arthur Smith is gone. And we've got a guy that actually knows what the fuck he's doing in Mike McCarthy now, that will use his personnel correctly and will design an offense that is built to throw the ball down the field and over the middle of the field and all these different things. So I look at a guy like Rodgers, who still has amazing football IQ, still has awesome arm talent. All of his teammates want him back, and he's one of the cheaper quarterback options on the market this year. Like, to me, and not to mention he's got all the playoff experience he does, which is important when you get to January. If you give this guy a legitimate wide receiver trio along with the tight ends we already have, if you bring back Gainwell along with Jaylen Warren, Mike McCarthy calling the plays, hopefully Patrick Graham fixing this defense from the mess that it was under Terrell Austin, like, we could be talking about a legitimately awesome football team next year, guys. Legitimately awesome football team. And it feels like so many people are like, let's blow it all up. And it's like, it just frustrates the hell out of me because I just see this team as a team that's so close to getting there, and they've got the opportunities to take those next steps. And Lord knows I'm praying that Omar takes those proper steps in these coming weeks. All right, $5 from Jagger says, when do you think we'll get some news, March 9th or 11th? When do you think we'll get some news, or I guess you just put the same question in twice, on Rodgers specifically or about free agency? Because we'll start hearing stuff on the 9th. So the thing about Rodgers is it kind of feels a little bit like he, A, wants to hear the Vikings out, and B, he wants to see what the Steelers do at receiver. And the Steelers are going to make their move at receiver probably within the first 2 days of free agency. And also, Kyler Murray, the other quarterback that's really heavily linked to Minnesota right now, can't sign with Minnesota until Wednesday. So I think we probably get an answer from Rodgers by next Wednesday. By the end of the day Wednesday, I'm guessing we have an answer from Rodgers, whatever it is. He's coming back. He's leaving for Minnesota. He's retiring. Those are really the only three options I see as possibilities, and I think by far returning to the Steelers is the most likely option. He says just free agency. So March 9th. Next Monday is when a lot of the news kind of breaks because teams are allowed to negotiate and come to terms with players on Monday. So make sure you tune in for our live coverage on Monday, guys. Just a reminder, we are actually going to be going live the day before free agency as well. We'll be live on Sunday afternoon to answer any and all questions that you have about the Steelers going into free agency. Maybe at that point we'll have an Aaron Rodgers answer and we can talk about which receivers pair well with him, all that different stuff. It's going to be an interesting next week or so, guys. So make sure you're subscribed because there's going to be a lot to talk about here over the next 7 days. All right, I really appreciate all of your guys' support. I'll see you guys on Sunday afternoon for our next live show here. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.